So over to you, Nergiz, whenever you're
Okay,
ready.
thank you, Gary. I was just, okay. Right, so thank you, Gary, for inviting me to do this session, and thanks everyone for joining. I hope it will be an interesting and at least interesting, if not entertaining session. So let me, can I share? Okay, so how can I just... Right, so our session is on virtual reality as a language learning environment. And I'm just going to try and move the videos somewhere else. Okay, sorry, back here. Right, so very briefly about myself. I first started exploring Second Life or virtual worlds in 2008. And I started a blog called SL Experiments, on which I shared my lesson plans and my reflections, and these are still available. I also co-founded a teacher support group, and which was also called SL Experiments. And we had regular meetings in Second Life and also collected resources on what we found out. I then summarized my reflections and what I found out in an article. You could all mute yourself. If you all, yeah. Yeah, so starting a Second Life was the article that was published in the English Teaching Professional. It's also available. Could everyone mute themselves, please, for the moment? And I did some teacher training sessions, which were very interesting. But after that, I had a very long break, a couple of years, until last year when I started exploring virtual reality again, for reasons that many others also came back to virtual reality, because as you know and are experiencing it, all learning went online. And I believe that certain things, I mean, online learning using virtual conferencing tools such as Zoom are great. And you can do fantastic lessons, language learning, language lessons as well. But there are also limits to that, or limitations. For example, if you wanted to do a role play, let's say you're in a cafe and you're ordering food. How realistic is that in an environment like Zoom? But in virtual reality, you can actually be immersed in a situation. You can be in a cafe, you can sit around a table, you can order food that somebody brings to you. So it offers us tools that are very nice to use for certain activities. Now, when I started exploring virtual reality again, I connected with people, and amongst others, I came across this company, Immerse, and they invited me to become their research manager. So that is my one of my roles at the moment, besides being a teacher and editor. Right, so what are we going to do or look at in this session? Very briefly at how VR developed, then what it is and what types of VR exist, where it is used in other fields, and then we will move to language learning, how it is used in language learning, look at different apps of their affordances that make it suitable for learning languages particularly, and also what kind of approaches, methods, and techniques it supports. We'll also very briefly look at the downsides. Like all technology, there are downsides, and at research on virtual reality and language learning. And hopefully we'll have some time to look at some apps and for questions. So first of all, what do you think? When did the first ever VR experience happen? And what do you think did it look like? If you know, or if you want to guess, you can type your thoughts or ideas in text chat. Give you a few moments. We have Jiamin is saying perhaps in the 90s. Any other guesses? Somebody else is saying 90s. No idea. Probably some time ago. Yes. 2000, 2005 perhaps. Okay, 70s perhaps. Maybe it's a trick question. Yeah, perhaps. We have 60s. Good. So let me see now. How can I? Yes. So I took a short course on Introduction to Virtual, Augmented, and Mixed Reality, and there they suggested it actually started 17,000 years ago with cave paintings, because they say, archaeologists say they in these caves with these paintings, they had flickering lights to, and they used that to create or to give an impression of these animals being animated. And you were sitting in these caves and have, felt perhaps immersed in this scene. But of course, what we are talking about today is not that old. You can see a few technologies here that are closer to what we are talking about. And what you can see here perhaps is the oldest one is perhaps 100 years old. So with photography, before that also was painting. You might have seen the paintings that are these huge paintings with panoramic scenes. But with photography particularly, and then they invented these various devices. The one at the bottom, you might even have one at home, maybe your parents. And then again, what is very close to what we have now with virtual reality is what you see in the photography. And what you can see there is the iPhone. And if you look at the price of the iPhone in the mid-80s, quite pricey. Before I forget, somebody said 1960s, and 1960s is actually when this type of VR development started or took shape, let's say. And you can see, if you look at the headsets or head-mounted displays today, they are much cheaper. And there is another difference. If you look at the photograph again, you see that these have cords and cables, and they're connected to a computer, or they were. And but the standalone ones, like Oculus Quest, the latest one, Oculus Quest 2, they are standalone. They have everything, the screen, the computer, everything in that headset, which makes it a great tool for learning, obviously. And because the prices have come down, it's become a widespread technology, not quite like smartphones yet, but I think we're getting there. The Oculus Quest 2 was sold out around Christmas, and they are planning to sell millions of these. So what is VR? Again, many people differ, but the simplest definition is this one: replacing a person's physical environment with a virtual one via a head-mounted display. We'll come back to that after looking at the types. There are three main types of virtual reality, and the one you might be most familiar with is 360-degree videos. Most of you have smartphones that can with which you can create 360-degree videos, but there are also special cameras that can do that even better into all dimensions. Then the next type is desktop VR, or also called 2D VR. There are people who say that this is not really virtual reality, but I see it as a continuum, really, on a scale. This, as an example, Second Life is the most popular one, also for education, but there are many other ones. And another type of desktop VR is web VR. And the difference here is that for desktop VR, you need to download the app onto your computer, but web VR is browser-based, so there is no download, which makes it great also for if you're starting out with virtual reality, to provide easy access for students. And the third type is fully immersive VR. And before we go into details there, the first type, for the first and third type, you need the head-mounted display. If you look again at the definition, this is where you put on this headset and you are immersed in this world. With desktop VR, you just need your computer or your tablet. You don't need to put any headsets, but it means that you're perhaps less immersed. There are also applications which you can use with or without headset, which is actually great, again, if you want to use it with students, and some of them have a headset and others don't. You can still bring them together into the same environment. Now, if you look at fully immersed VR, we have tethered ones, and I showed you the picture here. If you go back, like these ones, where you are connected to a computer, and obviously then you are less mobile. And now we have more and more standalone ones, which you can really just put into your bag and go somewhere, but also in the room you are. You don't have to stay close to a computer. You can move around freely. And this brings us to the next point. We have here 3 degrees, 2 terms. These mean 3 degrees of freedom or 6 degrees of freedom. I don't want to go into too much detail, but this has to do with how sophisticated the headset is. And the newer ones are or have 6 degrees of freedom, which is great for language learning, because it means that besides the headset, you have also hand controllers. And now when you move in your physical world wearing the headset and the hand controllers, your movements, finger movements, facial movements, your total body movements are transferred into the virtual world. And as you can imagine, this is great for language learning, because we as language teachers use gestures and body movement a lot to explain things. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, for communication in general, gestures are very important. So this has made virtual reality more authentic, or communication and movements in virtual reality more authentic. Now, where is VR used? In many different fields, medical and health. It's very developed, and actually, Gary, I don't know whether you remember Martin Waters. He did his MA on ESP in virtual reality, but he has moved on into the medical field, into simulations in the medical field. So there it is used a lot. In the military, the usual suspect, police, finance, architecture. You can imagine in architecture that, you can, before you build something, you can actually build it in virtual reality and walk in and around it. It's used for professional and workforce training, soft skills training, and more and more now, and particularly last year, a lot of conferences and business meetings are taking place in virtual reality. It's always been used in entertainment for games, but now it is also again used more and more for socializing and for concerts, for example. So we can say that it is a normalized technology that people use in their personal and professional lives on often on a daily basis. And this is important again for language learning, because we want to use technology that people use in their real lives. And so that what we are doing is more authentic. The tasks, the tools, the context, the language, it makes it more authentic. Now, in ELT, there was a flurry of activity in Second Life particularly, and in some other virtual worlds between 2007 and 2011, or perhaps a couple of years longer. Some people have continued, some educators, but most activity was around this time. And then there is now renewed interest, including by major publishers. For example, in last year's Elton Innovation Awards, there was one nomination by Navio, Macmillan's Navio, and they describe it as gamified language practice in immersive 3D worlds. I don't think it is really immersive 3D, but I think that they use this expression shows that they're interested in it, and things are happening even with publishers who are usually very slow in adopting new technology. Cambridge Assessment English has also started using Minecraft education for what they call adventures in English. It's more used like a game, but again, I think it's interesting that they are getting into this area. And then there are many VR language learning applications that are produced by non-educators, by companies that come from the technology side. And we will have a look at some of these. Now, I want to move on into how we can use VR for language learning. And one of the main activity types, or not good activity types perhaps, are field trips. And for field trips, you can use these different types of VR in 360 videos. Again, you will these are not animated. They are real world places that you can take videos with your camera. Learners are immersed in the environment when they use a headset, but it's mostly a passive activity. So you can look around with your head, you can turn around or look up, look down, but you can't really do much in most of them. We will see alternatives or more interactive uses in a moment. An important fact is also that learners in this environment are alone. You are not with other learners. Each learner is in their own version of it, let's say. The videos do not have to be language learning specific. You can choose videos of famous places, museums, monuments, and there are many videos on YouTube that you can use, or teachers and learners can also create their own ones. The language activities here often happen before or after the experience. For example, the teacher might teach some vocabulary or grammar. Then they have this experience, and afterwards they perhaps do a writing activity or orally report what they have seen, how they have felt, or they can discuss what they've seen. So in this case, virtual reality is more used as a media, as a stimulus for talking, like we use other types of videos in our classes or images. With desktop VR, the situation is different, or also fully immersive VR. Here, the learners are immersed, but they can also interact with others and the environment and objects. So the language activities can happen within the environment during the experience, which is much more like the field trips in the physical world. So you go to a place together, you can talk about immediately what you're seeing, and yeah, do things together. And if you're in public places, it is also possible to have spontaneous interactions with strangers, just like it might happen in real life or in the physical world, which is great for free language practice, and students can even make friends. So next type of activity role plays and simulations. And here again, first we'll look at 360-degree videos. You have specific language learning applications in which individual learners can interact with people, like here this woman in the bakery, in pre-recorded video scenes. But the dialogues here are scripted because you're not interacting with them live. It's videos, yeah. So the dialogues are scripted, and it's more or less like multiple choice questions. You listen and then you choose the right question. But they have voice recognition. So you actually get to say the sentence, and then if it's recognized, the other person does what you say, and you can, in that way, you can interact. And I want to actually try and show 1 minute of video demonstrating this. I think, but maybe I need to stop sharing and reshare with.
Yeah, don't forget, Nergiz, you have to click when you try and share it. You know you need to click to sort of share your computer sound. Yeah.
Yes, I've just done that. So let's see whether it works. Okay, can you see the video?
Yes.
Okay. So before I start playing it, I will just play 1 minute, but I'll give you the link later so you can watch the whole 12 or 13 minutes. In the top left corner, you can see the person who's in the sitting room with the VR headset and the hand controller, that red thing. And you will see how they are moving, their gestures, and you don't, and then you see she's in this restaurant scene ordering food. Okay.
You can click on this VR mode button and you will get transferred into the virtual reality of Immerse Me. Look at that. I'm in a restaurant and the waitress is waiting for me to make an order. And there are options how I can order my main course. All right, I would like to order a main course, please.
Sure, what type of main?
Type of main. Oh, they have a steak. I want a steak. I'll go for a steak, please.
How would you like your steak cooked?
I like my steak medium. I'd like it medium, please.
Sure, would you like a side of chips or salad?
Chips? Are we in England? Yes, I would like some salad, please.
Okay, it won't be long.
Oh, cool. And now she went and she comes back with my food. Look at that. There's exactly the same food that I ordered. This is awesome.
Okay, so maybe you noticed when the plate comes, she looks down onto the plate. In the physical world also she looks down. So that is translated, that gesture. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Sharing. So, right. So, moving on to, and there are quite a few apps like this in different languages. And the actual app here, we will come back to that. You can also trial it. I'll give you the link later. In desktop VR, learners, again, interact with each other, the teacher and the environment and objects via their avatar. So you're represented by your avatar. As you noticed in the 360-degree videos, there is no avatar. It is as if you are looking into the scene. You have no avatar that represents you. But in desktop VR, you interact with the environment and with others via your avatar. The great thing about desktop VR with avatars is that whether it's the avatars, the objects, or the environment, they're highly customizable, which is great for realistic role play. So You can put on different clothes, you can go into different environments or build them, and then do your role play there. A disadvantage perhaps is that there is a lack of realistic gestures and facial expressions. You would have to create and use scripts which you have to trigger to show certain expressions or gestures. In fully immersive VR, usually they are less customizable, but it depends on the app. But as an advantage, you have your real gestures, body movements, and so on via the headset and controllers, which we said is the 6 degrees of freedom that allow for this. Next type of activity, collaboration and project work. You can do this in all types of VR again, but in the first one, the collaboration is not within the experience, not within the app. But you can, of course, have collaboration outside the app. For example, students could create their own videos, or they could have the experience on their own, but then talk to others about their experience, or they can create posters together, write reviews on their experience. So there can be collaboration about the app or about the experience, but not within the experience. Whereas in desktop VR, you have lots of opportunities for collaboration. You can build things together, you can plan and go on a trip together, you can decorate a place for a party, organize other types of events, and you can also do storytelling. And here, for example, create machinima. And machinima are films made in virtual reality. Or you can have them create comics, take snapshots in virtual reality, and then put them together into a story and create comic strips. So lots of things you can do here, but of course you have to have the skills sometimes, and also your learners would have to learn how to do these things. Fully immersive VR, here it depends the possibilities and options on what type of app you're using. And finally, and not finally, two more things, virtual exchanges. Again, not possible in 360-degree videos, but in desktop VR and fully immersive VR, it is possible to bring groups of students together from, for example, the local students and the remote students, or students from different schools, students from different countries even. They can chat together, they can collaborate, they can play, they can show each other famous places from their country and so on. So really great for virtual exchanges, would go beyond just seeing each other on a screen or chatting in text chat. And of course, you can use it for self-study outside class as well. Now, specific examples, 360-degree videos. What is very popular is Google Expedition. There are lots of videos that you can just use of different famous places around the world, or any kinds of places really. And teachers or students can also create their own videos. For example, if you wanted to show your street or your city where you live, and then share this with others who can then visit that street. Google Expedition is still around, but part of it will be expired, but there are similar tools. Now, a specific language learning app is the one that we watched a video about. It's called immerseme.co. And there is a demo version that you can try out later if you want to. Desktop VR, we have Second Life, is maybe the most popular one, and based on the same technology is Kitely, which is based on the OpenSim version. There's Allspace VR, which belongs to Microsoft, and it's an interesting one because it's a social VR, it's social VR. So if you go there, there are lots of people of all ages that you can meet and talk to, and you can use it with or without a virtual reality headset. An example for web VR is Mozilla Hubs. This is the same company, Mozilla, that also owns Firefox, and this is open source. It is still being developed, but it's one of the easiest to start with, because all you need to do, because it's browser-based, is you choose a room, you can add objects to it, add even a video screen and some other learning objects, and then you just share a link with your students and they can enter it very quickly. A desktop VR specific for language learning is Velawoods English. Now, this is a commercial product originally developed by Cambridge. Not sure whether Cambridge Learning or Cambridge Assessment English. It's a story, and you as a learner participate in the story, basically. So it's a mix between, it's not very, first of all, you're alone in this one for once. There are no other learners, but you interact with chatbots if you want in this world. And this is CEFR aligned, so great if you want to use it at the language school for specific levels. There is also a demo version which you can try out. And was fully immersive VR for children, there is Play to Speak. Again, they are placed in this cartoon environment where they interact with different scenes and speak to these characters in the world. And then you have Immerse. Immerse is the only one that I know of that is teacher-led. So it is, the clients are institutions and their teachers take students into the Immerse app, into different scenes that you can choose. And it's, again, it's curriculum integrated. It's also CEFR or GES aligned, so that's the Global English Scale. I think that's what it's called by Pearson. It's customizable also, so you have ready-made lesson plans that you can use for the experiences, but you can also write completely your own lessons and decide how you want to use a scene, including various objects that you can activate. You can change the language of some of the games in there. Yeah, so you have synchronous session with the teacher. And usually how it is used is that teachers in the physical classroom or in the virtual conferencing room, they teach part of the lesson there, and then they go into the app to practice more freely. And this is the one that you will hopefully have a demonstration of the teacher app on Thursday, I think. Now, affordances of VR. There are a lot of affordances. And I would say that immersion and the sense of presence are the main ones. So you feel immersed in this world, and because of that, you have a sense of presence. You feel you're actually in that environment. And all of the other affordances are related to this. So interactivity, because you can interact with the environment, it makes it more immersive. And because you feel immersed, it's an emotional experience. And embodiment is part of this. You have multisensory stimuli, auditory, visual, and so on. They're multimodal, so you have you can hear others, you can speak, you can write, and it's a first-person point of view as well. The fully immersive VR. In desktop VR, we said you have avatars. Now, all of this can lead to higher motivation and engagement, better learning outcomes. Yeah? better retention, better performance of the tasks, improved confidence, more authentic communication. One thing which I don't have here is reduced anxiety, and there is more research how it can affect anxiety and lower it so that students feel freer to speak the language they're learning. Now, just one example of a study that says learning foreign language vocabulary with gestures and pictures enhances vocabulary memory for several months. This study was with children, but there are similar studies with adults. And this actually is not surprising for language learners or language teachers, because we use, for example, TPR, total physical response, usually with younger learners and lower levels, because there is this theory that if you hear the word or say it and at the same time use gestures, that you will remember it better. But TPR is often only possible to use with lower levels, because there is a limit of the gestures, I guess, you can do. Whereas in a virtual world, the gestures are limitless, and you can also use them in the real context. So you are in the environment. Let's say you're in a kitchen and you're learning the language of the objects in a kitchen or things you can do. So you use gestures that are used in a kitchen. You see the objects that are in a kitchen. So it makes sense to me that then you will remember this much better. The references I added there as well, if you want to read more about this. Now, VR supports a lot of different methods, approaches, and techniques used in language learning. Contextualized or situated learning, because you can be in that particular environment. For example, if you're learning language let's say negotiating in a business meeting, you can be sitting in an office and talking to other people negotiating. You're doing tasks, so task-based learning, problem-based or project-based learning. You can collaborate, so effective collaborative learning. We said total physical response. It's active learning. You're doing things, not just reading about them, and connected to that experiential learning. As we know, experiences we remember in our real life. And here it's also experiences that we have in a virtual world, so they are much more memorable. I believe that VR is great as one component in a blended learning course. You could have a whole course in VR, but I believe it works very good in a blended learning course where the experience part, the collaboration, the project work simulations take place in VR. But if you're presenting language or grammar, you can do that in either virtual conferencing room or asynchronously. It works for self-study or group work, live sessions. And as we said, one thing that is being discussed at the moment a lot amongst language schools and educators is hybrid classes, hybrid learning, and you can bring local and distance students together in VR. So downsides, of course, we have downsides as well. You need good internet connection for most of VR. There can be health issues. Some people feel dizzy when they're wearing the headset. And it has to do with the fact that if you're sitting in the physical world, but moving in the virtual world, your brain gets confused. It's better if you're also moving in the physical world. But there are ways of limiting this or preventing it. And one idea is also to start slowly. So that's, again, it's a good idea perhaps not to have full sessions in VR. There can be privacy issues. For example, the Oculus Quest 2 requires you to have a Facebook account because it is owned by Facebook. There can be in public spaces or social VR, there can be bullying and harassment, but of course you can have private spaces to prevent that. Equity issues, yeah, if you require all your students to have headsets, that won't be possible perhaps. So it's good to have options where students can also join without headset. Accessibility issues, yeah, if you have students with certain disabilities, visual impairment, for example, can they participate in the lesson? On the other hand, it makes it more accessible for some students. For example, a student in a wheelchair can participate much better in certain tasks in virtual reality. Now, very briefly about where research is at the moment. A lot of the research up to 2015-16 was done in desktop VR, Second Life mainly. So we have to keep this in mind when we read research. They only the very last 3, 4, perhaps 5 years, you have more research also on fully immersive VR with headsets. Most research is short-term, short pilot studies, not embedded in a regular course. And this, of course, we have to ask ourselves. For example, often the result is that learning in VR is motivating and engaging. But what happens once the novelty wears off? Is it still engaging then? Then often teachers who are already interested in technology or in VR conduct these studies. But what happens once it is used school-wide, institution-wide, and regular teachers without the special interest in this technology have to use it? Does it still work? Is it still engaging? What difficulties can they have? And on the other hand, sometimes studies have shown that there can be cognitive overload because students and teachers, and they have to deal with the technology while also having to speak in the second language. But again, if it was a longer study, they would get used to the technology, would be in control of it, and they could focus on the language. So short-term studies are perhaps sometimes a problem. So what we need is longer-term studies, and studies conducted in regular courses embedded in the curriculum. Now, related to this, I would like to invite anyone who is interested in conducting research into VR for your MA dissertation, perhaps PhD dissertation, to use the Immerse app and conduct your research there with your students. We support this type of research in various ways, which we can discuss if you're interested. We have priority topics, but we are also open to other suggestions if you have a different specific interest. If you're interested in virtual reality, I have started curating content on my website. And there are also blog posts there. I'm also doing research, writing research blogs on various topics. Right, you have the references here, and let me see. I hope this wasn't too fast and too much, but we have 15 minutes. So what I would like to do while you're typing your questions, you can, maybe there are already some questions, you can type your questions, but I think we don't have enough time to try out. I wanted to actually try out Mozilla Hubs with you to take you there in this session. But rather than doing that, I will give you the links and you can do this in your own time. But I want to briefly show you one app, which is Virbella. It's a desktop app that you can also use with the headset, so you can use it either way. And this is one let's see, do I have to stop sharing first, I guess. So I have the app, which I am starting now. Take a moment. So let me start sharing again. Okay, so I'm launching the app from my computer, and this is a VR app that is used by schools. For example, I know that some language schools in Saudi Arabia use it at the moment because of the COVID restrictions, but it's also used by businesses for business meetings and also for conferences. No. Okay, my microphone is off. It's good because, as you can see, there are lots of people. And this is me. You can. So it's basically, it looks like a campus. Yeah. So the advantage, you can say, is it is familiar to people. So if you walk over here, for example, you have buildings that you have on a university campus, like an auditorium. And it's Second Life, you can fly, but here you can't, you have to walk. So let's move in there. And some people say, well, why would you replicate a physical campus in a virtual reality where you have all kinds of possibilities? You know, you could be sitting in the forest, or you could be in the sky. You know, why don't you use something more creative? But I think perhaps even particularly at the moment, there is a place for this, because you might want to have what you can't have in the physical world at the moment. Yeah, if students are used to sitting in a seminar room or in an auditorium and listening to a lecture, it is familiar. And so if you want to replicate this familiarity, you can use this kind of environment. And you can book private rooms so that you don't have these privacy issues or the issues with bullying and so on, and nobody interrupts your sessions. So there are smaller seminar rooms, but there is also some entertainment like speedboats and forest areas where you can just sit together and chill or have a discussion. So, and again, as I said, you can use this on the desktop, on a tablet, or also with a headset.